Oh man, it's sideways. Okay, so we're talking about combat, but like you know, Sonic's future, right? So it's gonna be kind of hard to talk about what we can't see, right? There's no gameplay of this, right? So just bear with me, and I'd love to hear your ideas. The reason it's timed is because it's your turn when this is done. I'll make a part 2, don't worry about it. This is actually already a sequel to my proposal for a hypothetical Sonic Frontiers 2. Now we're gonna start zoomed out, right? Okay, so the story, right? The story is super important in combat because if there's nothing you're fighting for, what's the point, right? You need the drama, and it will get to what makes it satisfying gameplay-wise later, okay? But first I wanna talk about the story, right? Now, the reason I'm using Black Knight footage right now is because Sonic actually ends up being wrong in who he assumes is the hero in this scenario. And that makes for a really interesting story. And I kind of want to lean into this. So the general premise, it doesn't really matter what they look like. Just know as the player, as you navigate through this hypothetical game, you're not really sure who the enemy is constantly, right? It's maybe a moral kind of story where everybody's kind of has to decide on their own what they're going to do, and there's no clear enemy at all times, which means that you're navigating through the hub, you actually have to decide who you're going to side with at every given moment, and then that quest will be informed by the choices that you make. Now again, some quests are just kind of short, like most of these games, and some quests are super integral to the plot, and this game probably will end up being short because of that. But I'm fine with a 3-hour game if it's a game where the story is almost completely different when you go back through it. Sonic is so clearly designed to be a game you replay over and over again to master the levels. So I think if the story does stuff like that, where you can go back and find different choices and see what would happen, because Sonic's about going your own way. So seeing where the wind flows and where the wind takes you if you did something different seems to really fit in. Again, I don't think we need a Sonic game that's super long and makes you do grindy things like this. Anyway, focusing on the combat, right? I want to rework the homing moves because there's so many moves that are homing. And the most satisfying thing to do in Sonic Frontiers was really the side loop, which you had to kind of pull off. Now, it was really smart because you had to circle an enemy, right? And that's something that you can utilize Sonic's speed to do. Now, the reason that all of Sonic's combat options were homing is because they were worried that if you're navigating the environment at a high speed, you're already aiming Sonic through an environment. You don't need to split your eyes and try to somehow focus on 2 things at the same time, right? So I'm fine if these things are like a guided homing in things. I actually drew some pictures of what I'd like the combat to be. I didn't get to draw everything that I wanted to, but basically the general idea is that Sonic is using wind as his weapon, and it becomes a projectile. And you'll see some familiar moves in here, and I should probably start with those so you know what I'm talking about. The one on screen right now, similar to Sonic's movement moves in Sonic Advance 2 when you press the triggers and a direction button after going off a spring or some objects, it propels Sonic in a direction, right? So I'm proposing that gust of wind then moves forward as a projectile depending on how much charge you want to use in that given moment, or if you have enough. It's a attack move, a melee move, that doubles as a movement ability, which is basically a reoccurring theme. So you'll see also I have a move where Sonic punches and some air goes out, basically making these moves have larger hitboxes instead of having them all be homing. And I feel like the cinematics should be saved not for these like moves you use over and over and over again, and they should be saved for the story moments and moves that are really, really hard to pull off, which we'll get to later on. So the homing attack, dialogue. Okay, so I gotta talk about the taunt because I touched on it before, right? So basically a taunt function would be also a way to get more dialogue out of the scenes, right? Maybe you're playing a quest that you don't really care about. So even if you like taunting, you won't taunt because you're trying to get through the quest as fast as possible. But if you're on a quest that's even a filler quest that you really like, taunt it up because it's going to get them talking and talking and talking. And since the enemy is ambiguous, this allows the writers to really have Sonic discover new characters and meet people and figure out what choices the player wants to make. And now I think we're finally ready to talk about cinematic finishes, okay? Cinematic finishes. So Sonic Prime is an incredible example of what I would like to see in cinematic finishes. Unfortunately, I talked so fast that I didn't get to the point in the footage where it's there, but I might be able to actually like skip to it. Yeah. So Sonic Prime is really great for cinematic finishes, and basically what I'd like cinematic finishes to be is visually really, really striking. The animators are incredibly talented in Sonic Prime, and I feel like if you hit like max charge, for example, that's something you can only get when you've mastered the game. Again, this is a hypothetical game, okay? So it would be designed where it's very rare to be like completely maxed out. So when you are, you're doing really cinematic stuff. Again, rewarding the players who have put more than just one playthrough in because they've mastered the combat. Again, I didn't go into super detail about all the combos, but again, I love the idea of a combo system in Werehog, right? The only thing I didn't like about Werehog is it prevented you and locked you in areas. If this future hypothetical Sonic game did that, I would be upset because it's all about multi-use abilities. I liked the idea of Werehog because they could have made it an offensive and defensive ability, which is what I'm doing here with the inspiration of Sonic Frontiers and Sonic Prime and Sonic Battle, right? Because that's actually where I got the wind weapon idea, is from that spin dash move. Also, as I said, spin dash, right? Spin dash would suck enemies in, everything. Double effects for everything. I have more ideas than I can remember. Werehog is a video I'm definitely going to make, so I'll see you next time. Peace.